Welcome back, everybody, to Two Guys and a Stack of Comics. My name is Reed. Along with me, as always, is Mike. And Mike, it was finally your turn in the Absolute Universe, sir. Your favorite character, the Flash, although not your favorite rendition of the Flash, but your favorite superhero, the Flash, finally gets his debut, the fourth Absolute Universe title. Me and you have had some mixed reactions. I'm still very much in on Batman. I know you're still in on Batman. Wonder Woman and Superman lost you. I'm still picking those up. So we're probably both 1 for 3, although I'm still hanging out with that. So we get a second wave. We've got Flash. We've got Green Lantern. I think we got Martian Manhunter. I think Martian Manhunter's next week. We get the first issue of Absolute Flash. We've got our A cover here, and then I think this was the standard B cover for some folks. Mike, you picked up like a foil cover for this one as well. So they
Oh yeah, I had to, they tried to sell me four different copies. They saved them all for me because, they know how flashy I am. So yeah, I picked up three. I got the B cover like you did too,
yeah,
I run the Flash archive, so I have to,
you
be
got to make sure
prepared
it's recorded for the historical record.
purposes. I love that foil cover though, don't you? It's kind of groovy.
No, it's really cool when DC does these launches that they do offer a lot of cover options. I know incentive covers and variant covers, it can kind of strike people as a little scamish. And I know there's some things with, how they make comic book shops buy, but I think for a number one issue, getting a lot of cool different covers is pretty cool. So I think they
Hey,
did great. Jeff Lemire, the writer on this, Nick Robles on art. Jeff Lemire, I think one of the better DC writers. He's doing a great job on the JSA book they have right now. Did a fantastic run on Green Arrow a couple years ago. And so we knew we were going to get some pretty well written comic books from Jeff Lemire. But I'll kick it to you first, sir, because you're the Flash guy on this. What were your thoughts on Absolute Flash #1? First time we've had like a new sort of Flash story starting in quite a while. What were your thoughts?
I really liked it. I think Jeff Lemire crafted a good story, and it's set up to you know go. It could go. It could have long legs, as we say. I thought the artwork was really good too. Like, show some of these panels.
Yeah, Nick Robles did
For
a good job on it for sure.
the digital artwork that's normally like super flat and something that I don't really care for. This art, I think they did well. I liked it. I liked the presentation. I love how at certain points you know, they they had the border panels like the same color as the background, kind of a splash page going through. I don't know. I thought it was really cool. I was really excited for a new jumping on point for Flash and to have some good news storytelling. And so yeah, I was gonna get this one, of course. And I'm really pleased with it. Although I'm a Barry Allen fan, I'm also a Wally West fan. But I think, like we've discussed before on this channel, the younger generation grew up with Wally West, and so they knew him. And Barry was dead for 20 years. The only Flash they knew was Wally West. So I get why they're still running with Wally. I know they brought Barry back, and he's in and out again, and he's in and out in one issue in this
Yeah.
comic, but he's still there. I like that he's still a part of this story. And spoilers, if you haven't read it yet, you can just skip to the end. But it was a really well crafted story. I like how it began powerfully, and then it took you into the narrative of the boy's life. And while he's really young, like he's only 15 years old, and his father works for the military, and he's a military brat. He's all over the place, and he's kind of downtrodden, stuck in this experimental military base. And come on, comic book fans, you know what goes on in an experimental
Yeah.
military base. All kinds of woo woo, you never know what's going to happen. And lo and behold, something happens. So I like how it's set up with a little bit of mystery. Like, well, you kind of know what happens, but you kind of don't know. And I love the way that they kind of weaved the rogues into this story at the very end.
Yeah.
And so now you've got all of Flash's classic rogues, including strange experiments with apes and intelligence, which is also a Flash trope. So there was that, and then it looks like we got a version of Boomerang, Captain Cold, and
Glider, yeah.
yeah, and also the Mirror Master. So wow, for a first issue to pack all of that in, I think they had a tough job to do, but Lemire put them all in there, and he did it really well for a first issue. It was slam, bam, boom. It drug you in, and it made you it made you relate to Wally, empathize with him, and then as a Flash fan, you get all of these flashy tropes, including Barry Allen, who makes a brief but important appearance. Be brief. um, but I do think that it's set up to where Wally's going to try and fix things. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean,
What did
you
you
would think
think?
with time travel and all that, so my thoughts on this. I mean, and we can kind of give a brief plot summation. Essentially, like you said, Wally's a military brat. His mom has passed away. They reference that a lot in the comic about how much his life has changed since his mom died. His dad is borderline abusive, very mean and disrespectful to Wally. And so Barry appears in the book as kind of a scientist at this camp that he stuck at, or this fort that he stuck at. And Barry's I at least liked that Barry was seen as a nice, mature. He's not the Flash, obviously, but he played a lot of the role that he plays for Wally in the standard universe of being a helpful mentor. Obviously, as you mentioned, the accident that seems to cause Wally to become the Flash seemingly kills Barry in the comic book, and it gives Wally powers. And so basically, while Barry is trying to show Wally what he does to kind of help Wally because he sees some potential in him, things go awry. Wally gets the powers of the Flash, and then it's led to that Wally believes his dad is sending the Rogues as like this enforcement thing to get him back, and that's
Yeah,
largely kind of where we see the book at. I think what I liked about this book, and I think this was some of the complaints I had with these Absolute Universe books early on. I like that Wally's young. I like that he's 15. I like that he's just getting the powers, that we're literally seeing the first steps of him being that. Because one of the things that I thought was always done so well in like the Ultimate Universe, the successful one that lasted for about 20 years in the early 2000s, was yes, it's well worn that we know what happens to Uncle Ben and what happens to Spider-Man and all that, but they showed it to us because I thought, were truly trying to give someone of, hey, if this is the first time you've picked up a Spider-Man comic book, we want this to be a true jumping on point for you. That you don't have a bunch of, here's what happened in the past, but we're not going to show you kind of stuff. And so I liked that with Wally being a younger superhero, with him being, at his first steps kind of as the Flash. This truly was the first issue of this. I think Absolute Batman, I thought, while I liked the issue, the fact that we 4 issues in, we're doing an origin issue for Absolute Batman, it's like, shouldn't that have just been the first issue? And so I appreciated that Jeff Lemire set it up that way. And I know Absolute Batman and Superman and Wonder Woman have been doing flashbacks of like their past and their future. I just think it's a more effective storytelling tool when you start as Jeff Lemire did with, no, you're literally going to see how does he become the Flash? How does he get his costume? What is he going through? I think, like you said, the Nick Robles art was a really strong thing. This has been a well-seen thing in the promo images, but I kind of like how he draws I don't know if it's going to be the speed force, but like the impact of his
yeah,
powers and the abilities that he had. I think it was a really well executed story overall. I think the part that I didn't love, I mean, I didn't love Barry Allen dying, obviously. I think The Flash is in an interesting place in that it's one of these things where DC Comics, I think, has to pick a lane of who is the Flash. And me and you have talked about this with companies seemingly having too many people in the mantle and stuff like that. Like you said, there is a generation of folks from the 80s until the 2010s that were all Wally West. That was largely my childhood. As if you would have asked me who's the Flash, I would have said Wally West. He was on the JL cartoon. He was on, most of the media stuff.
Yep.
But since 2011, really, since they brought Barry back, I think Rebirth was a little before that, but really since Flashpoint happened, the
Yeah.
reset was Barry, the movie was Barry, the TV show was Barry. Barry's been in the Injustice video games. Barry is the Flash. And so it's weird because for 15 years, Barry's the Flash. And then they just decided we're pivoting back to Wally everywhere. And so
Yeah.
to me, I actually would have preferred it being Barry in this as opposed to Wally, especially because we're starting so fresh. We're starting with a 15-year-old Flash. We're starting from the ground floor. You could have really built that up. It's not that Wally is a bad character. I like Wally, but I think Wally's just a weird character to start with in that he's the third Flash, but we made him the first one. It's a weird choice, and I guess they've made their pick, and I mean, it doesn't bug me enough that I'm like not going to read it. I just think this is again DC Comics. If you were going to make Wally the Flash again, right? Maybe don't do a Barry Allen movie. Maybe don't do a Barry Allen TV series because I
Well,
think we're now in a weird place where the generation of Flash fans who see Wally as the Flash are 30 something year olds. The generation that Jax, I would imagine, thinks Barry Allen's the Flash because he watched the TV show. And so it's
for
just a weird
nine
choice.
years.
It's
Yeah.
a weird choice for DC, in my opinion. If your goal is let's build a younger audience, let's do refresh points and try to make the comics a little more, relatable for folks and easy, like why would you pick the Flash that really only people who are in their 30s would really identify easily as the Flash? And all that said, I think it was a great comic book. I definitely am in for the first arc. I would have been in no matter what. But I think the biggest thing this gives me confidence with is Jeff Lemire is just a good writer, and he crafts a good narrative. And there was some cool usage of flashbacks to Barry Wally pre-getting the powers, and then with the powers in modern day, but not so much that it felt like interrupting. It just felt like a cool narrative device that they did. And while I don't like seeing Barry Allen bite the bullet, I will at least say, comparatively to how some things have handled legacy characters, at least he showed up, was nice, filled the mentor role. He didn't play the villain role. At least I'm hoping that's not some retcon they do that the reverse Flash will be Barry Allen or something like that.
No.
I thought that was good. And so much like Absolute Batman, where I think this one has a chance to succeed. It's just the strength of the writer. Jeff
Yeah.
Lemire's a great writer. Scott Snyder's a great writer. And I think that's where DC will struggle with some of the other books in this Absolute line is the strength of your writer is obviously what makes these books happen. And it does, at least from the first issue, seem that, geez, surprise, surprise, Jeff Lemire and Scott Snyder, both of whom have had well-received long runs on comics, can craft an interesting narrative with a character. Um, the tease of the rogues and all that stuff for you, Mike. Did you like all that being thrown in the first issue, or did you think maybe it was too much at once? Like, how did you feel about how much they? Because it did. So one critique I'd have is it did seem to throw a lot into this book.
They did, and for a Flash fan, I'm just gobbling it up. So I'm like, oh, okay, this is cool, and oh, okay, well that's cool, and I liked it, and the panel of uh, the skeleton of Barry at the end is an homage to a famous Silver Age Flash cover. I think it's 199 or 198 or something. I can't remember the number now. Of the dead Flash and the skeleton and the kids looking down at him.
Mhm.
He's in a hole. If I would have remembered, I would have pulled it out to show it, but it was kind of cool. But yeah, the rogues came in kind of quick and fast. I have
Yeah.
to, you have to kind of think, you know, everybody wants the story to go for a long period of time, but when you're doing these all in kind of things and you're the writer and you have to craft a story and you're thinking, well, I'm slated for 12 issues, but if sales are bad, you know.
Yeah. No,
so,
it's only an
so
ongoing book as long
yeah,
as the sales justify it. Yeah.
and so I kind of think writers are kind of stuck with that in these absolute and ultimate kind of storytelling. I mean, if you had a story and there were going to be important elements and you had to bring it to a close real quick, you want to make sure you got them in at the starting block, just so you could build. Normally, like if this was like the first flash of, say, the New 52, which ran for 5 years or 6 years,
I think it
whatever.
was. I think it did run for 52 issues overall. Yeah.
So, oh yeah, that's right. That's why it was the 52.
DC
but
on the nose with that number for sure.
then you might have been able to stretch it out a little bit. But you got
Mhm.
to think, in the mind of the creator, like, okay, I want to tell this great story, and you get the green light on it. And so I think the smash, pow, bang effect
Just throw
of the first,
everything in at once, kind of.
yeah, has to happen in the first issue. You got to grab them or else you're sunk, especially in a spin-off world like this. I will say, I don't know. I was kind of thinking on the drive back from the comic shop today. I was like, okay, so I know it's going to be Wally and it's going to be all in on Wally. Could the main Flash just go back to Barry?
Very.
That's kind of what I was thinking, because you could have the main continuity, and maybe Wally in the main continuity, and take some time off to be with the family for a while. We can get a string of Barry stories. That would be great
Yeah, I think
for
that's
us
the thing
Flash
that's
fans.
so weird is they utilize the characters very. There's a, I mean, maybe they're benching Barry because they did depower him in the main universe, and then they chose Wally here. Again, I mean, maybe the movie was so bad. They're just like, Barry's a creative dead end, which really
Yeah,
stinks because that movie wasn't Barry Allen at all.
no,
I
it
just
really
think
wasn't.
it's a weird choice they made to go with Wally. I will say at the very least, I appreciated from a reader standpoint that we started with a teenager as the Flash, and I think it gives a lot of room to grow. Should this comic run for 100 issues, as we're all hoping a lot of these absolute ones do, then you can really have the character progress the same way they've done with great characters like Spider-Man in the Ultimate Universe.
Yeah,
And I think that's a smart move because you do throw an era of unpredictability if he's got no one to teach him how to use the powers, and you can do some of those great classic issues like that Stan and Steve did, where Peter loses and he's struggling with a lot of the classic elements that you can relate to as someone who used to be a teenager, right? And I think it does give a shot that I would say I don't know if it will, but it could be something where like younger readers might be able to pick this up and go, "Hey, that was pretty cool," or interested, or get him. And I think what it did do a great job of is I don't like when comic book writers write teenagers like try to make them cool because it always comes off like an old person like, "Hey, fellow kids, I said this kid." Like, it's so lame and cheesy. I like that they just wrote him as he's inexperienced, he's a teenager, he's young, right? We
yeah,
don't need to try to do the lingo like he's young or like, no, we're just gonna, he's a teenager, we're gonna write him like a character who's a little inexperienced, and that will get you the buy-in. And so I appreciated that out of it. I think this has the second most potential of the number one issues outside of Absolute Batman 1. I think this was way better number one issue than Wonder Woman. I think it was a way better number one issue than Superman.
I
But
agree.
not surprising. I mean, you get a good writer, you get a good story, and I think that's what you get with Flash number one here. It'll be interesting. We'll follow up on these as they go, but definitely, I would say I would absolutely recommend it to folks. I think if you're a longtime Flash fan, I'll be honest, I've been buying Flash 10, 15 years at this point in my long box on it. I'm really disappointed with the mainline Flash comic book that's going. So I think if you're a Flash fan who's a little bit tired of what they're doing in the main universe right now, which I wouldn't blame you
This
for,
is exciting.
this is an exciting, well-written, good starting point. And I'll give Nick Robles credit. I don't know what he's been on before, but I thought the art was really, really good in the comic book. I
I
thought
loved
some
it.
of the character, I didn't love the new Flash costume, but we didn't see it in action a lot, so maybe it'll grow. But overall, I think a really well-written comic book for you guys. Mike, would you do a recommend on this one as well for folks? Two thumbs up. All right.
Absolutely.
We'll have to
Yes.
come up with some sort of official ratings thing on that we do on here. But no, definitely would recommend. Let us know what you guys thought. If you picked this up, what did you think of Absolute Flash number one? Did you like it? Did you read it? Are you interested? Or has the Absolute Universe lost you already where you didn't pick it up at all? But let us know, folks. As always, thank you so much for watching. God bless you. We'll catch you in our next video.
Thanks, everybody.